It's like sushi.
It's kind of got the crunch of an M&M.
We're talking about peanut butter M&Ms.
Oh, those are so good.
Oh. And then he brings us this.
Like, hey, let me just tell you what the best M&Ms are.
What? Okay.
Pretzel M&Ms.
No. I've never had those.
They're no.
Here we've got Paul Wittenberger here. If I've already decided, if we lose with Paul Wittenberger, then we truly did lose.
Oh, look at him!
It's big too. It's nice to be you, huh, Pastor?
Well, I just tell you, the Lord has certainly blessed us this year for sure. In many different ways, but what a blessing. I've sat here, this is my third fish caught, while Greg's caught 0.
Well, I learned a lesson, and that's not to eat uncooked catfish. I thought it was cooked, and I should have listened to the older brethren who have done more fishing, and they said it wasn't cooked. And I said, no, it was cooked. And I ate it, and today I just had a little, I puked it up, but praise Jesus, I'm feeling better now. So, but as a lesson to all y'all out there, don't eat uncooked catfish.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope y'all enjoyed the intro there. That was the Revival Survival event that is hosted by Revival Baptist Church, Pastor Patrick Boyle. And we are really excited about having Pastor Boyle with us today. And I'm going to be talking about survival instinct. Now, that's something, one of the things we've been trying to do on this program is trying to help men understand themselves. Most of it, people are just kind of going through life, just flying by the seat of their pants. And they often, because they do not understand themselves, they don't understand what makes men tick and do things the way they do, often it can get them in trouble, because we do have to remember that we have a sin nature. So there's things we got to be very careful. And I think understanding ourselves is important. And one of the ways that man can really learn about himself is through events like Revival Survival. And so before we get into that subject of the survival instinct and why men are into survival type shows, survival type events, I do want to talk with Pastor Boyle about his event. If you've been following my channel very long at all, Pastor Boyle is, I'm sure, no stranger to you, but I do appreciate him coming on the show and being a part of this today. And so in case anyone doesn't know you, Pastor Boyle, go and introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit about your Revival Survival event.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor McMurtry and Liberty Baptist Church. Always good to be here. And my name is Pastor Boyle, and my family and I are here in the greater Orlando area at Revival Baptist Church. We have a north location in Jacksonville as well. And every year we host a survival camping trip for men in the church, men and boys. And it started off with, it was after the service one time. We were all kind of guys hanging around talking, and we said, let's do a camping trip. And then it came into, what gear should we bring? And then it started, how guys are. I can get by with less than you can. And, I can live off the land longer than you could. And so then from that conversation, we started this challenge. And we called it the Revival Survival Challenge. And what we do in a short kind of nutshell here, we divide the group into 2 teams, and it's done randomly by drawing names. And the 2 teams are dropped off at a location, and then 3 days later, they're picked back up. And so we'll go off, and we're dropped off, and we'll say, be back at this same spot this time, this day, and the two teams wander off. Now, they don't have to necessarily stay separate, but they're setting up separate camps. They're going two different directions. And each crew has a cameraman, and the gear is limited to a list of about 10 or 15 items, very small amount of items. No food is allowed to be brought at all. And then everybody has to come back and report back, and then the footage is gone through, and we create a little fun film that our church watches, and then the church will vote based on the footage which team did better. And we did this now 3 years. This will be our 4th year coming, and it's been fun. Everybody has a great time because of the way the film is produced. The church gets to watch it. They get to participate, but it's a great time to put away technology. It's a bunch of guys going into uncharted woods. We're in the middle of nowhere, no cell phone signals. And you can bring a hammock to sleep in, and that's pretty much it, other than, some survival items. And you just, as a team, work together, and you become in tune with the Lord because all the outside distractions are gone. And you come back physically drained, but you just come back refreshed, having good fellowship. And then, you say you're never going to do it again. And then next year, you're like, count me back in. I want to go do it. And it's been a lot of fun. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. There's the competition side, there's the survival side, and we enjoy ourselves each year.
Well, that sounds like a lot of fun. So I've watched some of the previous revival survival videos, and they're very entertaining to watch. And it's kind of like watching one of those survival shows, but with people So I think it makes it even more entertaining. And I know my kids have watched those at the house and had a good time. So if you haven't watched those, I need to maybe remember to put a link in the video to some of the previous ones. So are there 1 or 2 of those online right now?
There's 2 now. Last year's with Paul Wittenberger. So here's how Paul got involved. All right. The first 2 years, my team lost. The church saw the footage, and we lost terribly. And some of the things that I thought were film worthy didn't make it. And so, it's based on the film, not on actual events. And so I was like, I need to really somehow vamp up our footage. And so I, just out of the blue, I said, hey, I wonder if Paul Wittenberger would be a good victim for this. And he not only was willing to come, he actually did well. He enjoyed it. The rules are cameramen are allowed to bring food. They're allowed to, because we want them at their best, getting us at our worst. And so he lived like we did. He was allowed to bring all the luxuries. He did not. And he was in his element. I was surprised. He did very well. And so this year, the film's not completely done. We have some trouble editing. But when it is released, we'll put, of course, for everyone to watch. And I'm going to put my plug in, vote for my team if you have a vote in this matter. But I think we did very well. I'll be surprised if my team doesn't win this year. And part of it being it was better documented through Paul Wittenberger. So I appreciated him. But it was just a lot of fun. I thought about doing some green screen events where it's like intentionally bad editing, where it's like I'm holding this string of fish and it like flickers so it shows it was green screened in, and thanks Paul Wittenberger, so well, I mean, each year we've picked a different location, but we're far enough. We're probably about 45 minutes from like a gas station or anything like that. And certainly there's no cell phone signal. So it's like we park and then we just go. We don't go into a campsite. We walk into woods and then you just go as far as you can. And so you're looking for things like a fresh water system. You're looking for things. Where would we camp? And part of the voting is who picked the best location for camp. And nobody gets to scout ahead and, 3 weeks prior. So we're both exploring. We both end up just choosing something. And the whole time we're looking, you've got a whole group. There's usually 10. Well, I would say the last year was probably 15, 20 in each team. But a lot of people trekking through the woods, and you don't want to trek the wrong direction too far, because halfway through the day you're out of energy. You haven't even set up camp, but it's a lot of fun. But it brings out organizational skills, teamwork, survival skills. One thing you are required to bring, and that is some kind of like a life straw or a water filter system. Even though you're drinking water from the creek or what, you have to filter it. We don't want anybody getting sick. But that's one of the luxury items we do bring is some kind of a filter.
Okay. And yeah, I guess I lost my audio for a minute. I think I'm back though. Let me know if you can hear
You're back.
me. Okay. But yeah, so yeah, I've got a few pictures on here I wanted to show people because now again, you're in Florida, you're in gator territory down there. So I mean there's and snake territory too.
Yes.
So yeah, let me show you a few pictures. This looks like a skinned snake that we've got going right here.
That is a water moccasin a giant water moccasin that we killed, skinned, and grilled, and it tasted so good. You'd be surprised how good anything tastes when you're hungry. It tasted like steak.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that looks absolutely disgusting. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, here's another picture.
Yeah, that's bringing back some good. Making me hungry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that part doesn't look too appealing to. But again, you know what? I'd like to think I'd do it if that's what I had to do to survive. And so, yeah. If you are into survival type stuff, you'll have to get with Pastor Boyle.
Yeah, we ran into bear, gator, all snakes. Obviously, there. We ate. Trying to think of all the things we had. All kinds of fish. Catfish and bass and the brim. All the different kinds of fish that are out there. But then we had crawfish. We've had snail. We've had something that's prevalent in Florida that wouldn't be gross to most people is swamp cabbage, which it tastes like it's the heart of a palm tree. And when you cut it up and boil it, it tastes like cabbage. If you like cabbage, it tastes very similar to cabbage. So there's at least that normal staple, and that's everywhere. But we had duck. We had a duck one year that we were able to eat. So you're definitely anything that moves. When you have 20 guys with no food packed, and it's day 2, I don't care what it is. If it's moving, they're seeing food. And you're frying it up thinking, I wonder how that tastes.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So, well, anyway, just so the reason, of course, we're doing this subject and why I wanted to have Pastor Boyle be, because I know they put on this event that a lot of people look at it and think, why would a group of guys do that? Why go out into the woods and just suffer for 3 days, eating snakes, eating, anything you find out there, going out there with the gators and snakes and things like that. Why do men do things like that? And really, it is a fact that survival type stuff is very popular in our culture. We have, there's many different survival type shows out there that are very popular today. And people watch these things. They get really good ratings. You've got guys like Bear Grylls, and I've seen, I don't watch most of these shows. Like reality stuff irritates me, but either way, it's very popular. And I think there's a reason for this. And I think especially with men, typically these type of things have more of a male audience than a female audience. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, just kind of help men understand themselves a little bit. I want to talk about survival instinct, or the definition is the ability to know what to do to stay alive. And self-preservation is a behavior or set of behaviors that ensures the survival of an organism. It is thought to be universal among all living organisms. For sentient organisms, pain and fear are integral parts of this mechanism. Pain motivates the individual to withdraw from damaging situations or to protect a damaged body part while it heals and to avoid similar experiences in the future. Most pain resolves promptly once the painful stimulus is removed and the body is healed, but someone's pain persists despite removal of the stimulus and apparent healing of the body, and sometimes pain arises in the absence of any detectable stimulus, damage, or disease. Fear causes the organism to seek safety and may cause a release of adrenaline, which has the effect of increased strength and heightened senses such as hearing and smell and sight. Self-preservation may also be interpreted figuratively in regard to the coping mechanism of one's need to prevent emotional trauma from distorting the mind. So this is kind of a thing on self-preservation. Another thing too, I say, it says it's self-preservation is essentially the process of an organism preventing itself from being harmed or killed. It is considered a basic instinct in most organisms. Most call it survival instinct. Self-preservation is thought to be tied to an organ's reproductive fitness and can be more or less present according to perceived reproduction potential. If perceived reproduction potential is low enough, self-destructive behavior is not uncommon in social species. Self-preservation is also taught by some to the basis of rational and logical thought and behavior. So I don't know if you caught all that, but there is something in us that it's just a natural part of us. It's in all living things where we do not want to be harmed or killed. It's our instinct. It's who we are. And we all have this in us. And I believe that because of this, this instinct that's in us, it motivates us to want to do some of this stuff like revival survival. Because it's almost as if we instinctively know that today in our culture, when you look at our culture, all the technology we have, when you look at our government and how wicked they are and all the things that they're doing, it's like we instinctively know that anytime they could shut down the grid or something, and we're just sitting ducks. And so it's like some of us, we look at all these things, we just kind of have a heightened awareness and like, you know what? I am very dependent on technology. I probably should know how to do some of these survival things because the day may come where we need it. And we've just become very soft as a culture today. And I think that is kind of dangerous. And so I think your desire to go do some of these things, that are kind of crazy that people look at like you're crazy when you do, I think it's just your survival instinct kicking in. And so we want to talk about that a little bit. And so we do. As a living, thinking being, we have a survival instinct. And we know that if the grid goes down, if something catastrophic happens, we want to be able to survive. And so, Pastor Bull, obviously, when you guys are out there doing your thing, I'm sure a lot of these type of subjects and things come up. But I'm sure some of it's motivated by fun. But, you have some guys, too, who take this kind of thing pretty serious, too. And, maybe, and typically the people who are really into survival are people who are also more caught up in what we would call the conspiracy world and things like that. And I think there's a reason for that. I think those people realize we might need this stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the fact that we even have a survival instinct, to use that term, is proof that there's a creator and that life is not just an accidental blob that formed into what it is today, but that a biblical perspective would bring that life is valuable and precious and that it was created with a purpose. And so we want to sustain that. And so a proper view of Scripture, a Christian with a biblical worldview, values life. And, then when you stop and you think about it from like all creation, animals and things of that sort, God actually made creation, the animal kingdom for us. And long before Adam and Eve fell, God set Adam in the garden to dress it and to keep it. That's not a curse. And so living off the land and keeping and dressing the garden, that's a great thing. That's what God has intended. And so I don't know that, fear is a motivator, but fear should not be the motivator in the Christian life because God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And so it's more like a righteous man foreseeth evil and hideth himself from it. Like we know that this government is not looking out for our own good. We know that, we've read the book of Revelation. We know the world economy is coming together. We know the mark of the beast. We know. And so we want to be able to say, hey, I want to be able to sustain life and provide for my family. And, these are areas in a fun way that we can do it. And still, I think the biggest takeaway all of us come out, it's just 3 days. It's not even 3 days. We show up on a Monday morning, And then it's all day Monday, all day Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning it ends. And we come back and we have church that evening, and we have a big meal that the ladies prepared to feed the hungry men coming back. But the takeaway is always, wow, that's harder than it sounds. And, that's 3 days, let alone, months on end, or who knows, 3.5 years, where you have the time of tribulation. And so the scriptures, when it comes to things like food and raiment, he tells us not to worry about those things, and that's what the Gentiles seek after. And so there's a difference between it, liken it to a guy today that won't work because God's going to feed him. Well, if you won't work, you're not supposed to eat. So take away technology and you're like, well, God will just feed me. Well, no, he's going to give you a fishing pole and a fishing line, and you got some grass or some soil in the backyard, plant some seeds, raise some chickens. There is something on our end where God has given us the ability, and he's given us the ingredients. And we as men, we want to take that challenge. Like, I want to be able to live off the land. I want to know what plants to eat. I want to know how to, clean a rabbit and, catch a squirrel. And so I think it feeds both. I think it's like anything, you can take it and carry it to extreme. There are people who own guns because they're afraid and they think that gun is going to save them. Well, that's misplaced faith. But there's also people who own guns who know we live in a wicked world, and we might be in a position where God will allow us to deliver someone from the captor or protect our family from, a night invasion. And our faith doesn't have to be in the gun or in our survival instinct. And so there's that balance that goes back, because typically, like you said, the guys who are full blown into the survival, they come, they're decked out, they're ready. They're the ones that are, the prepper mentality. And if I can just get enough ammo, we can pull off this government. And I think that's out of fear. And you want to do it out of just, hey, God made me to be a provider, and I want to learn how to provide. And so there's that balance. But we like to include the fun side. And anytime you do something fun, and Pastor McMurtry, I'm sure it's, the same for you. There's always people who, you're a pastor, you're not supposed to have fun. Anything fun is considered irreverent or sacrilegious. And, they act as if we're raising, a congregation in a Catholic monastery where laughter is sinful. Yet you'll find in the Bible that laughter is good. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine. And a verse I want to just add in, a couple of them, is Proverbs 15:13 says, a merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart, the spirit is broken. And so a merry heart will make your countenance, good. You'll have that great disposition. You'll be happy. But then the verse that comes to my mind that ties with that is Proverbs 27:17. Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend. And, we always use that verse, and I don't think it's out of context, but it's not true to this part of, what it's teaching, I believe. And that is like iron sharpening iron. We're bouncing ideas off each other. Hey, what do you think about this verse? What do you think about that verse? And that's great. But in the context, it's about the countenance of a friend. Mm-hmm. And it's just saying, when you have the iron sharpening iron, when you have friends, helping each other, hanging out, talking, camping, it's going to cause your countenance to improve. And you need that time of friendship. You need that time, men with men, the older teaching the younger, and you'll come back, with a great friendship, and you'll come back with lifetimes of memories. And you miss out on that when it's just like, no, we're just going to go to church and sit there. That's all that church is about. It's not about friendship. It's not about fun. It's not about camping or any activities. They act as if any activity is sinful because you're not soul winning. Well, no, there are times where your countenance needs sharpened. And that is what the Bible says a good friend will do. It'll sharpen the countenance of a friend. And so, you don't lose out on the fun side of it, that, as a church or as a family, as a parent, include fun in your children's life. Don't make Christianity a punishment, that nothing can be fun and it's all about read your Bible and don't enjoy it, don't have fun. And so we like to tie both sides into it. It's fun. And then also, the severity of it when you wake up on Tuesday morning and you hadn't eaten anything on Monday, and you're like, oh no, what do we do? Well, let's pray for some food today.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, in that, yeah, fun is fantastic. People who act like pastors can't have fun, I don't even let those people think they can influence me, because I'm going to have fun any way I can have it. But it's interesting, some of the things that we think are fun, like shooting, like the survival stuff, as guys, we'll go paintballing and shoot at each other. And I think one of the reasons these things are so satisfying to us, again, it is fun, but it's also, I think part of it is that survival instinct, because it makes us feel good. It makes you feel good when you go out to a shooting range and, and you're, nailing your targets, because it's like, it makes you feel ready, makes you feel ready in case you ever need it. Same thing too, doing it with a group of guys, I mean, most people when they go shooting, they like taking their buddies with them. Why? Well, typically when you fight battles and things, you got an army with you. You got people that they're counting on you, watching your back. And so it's like there's just something in us that knows that we need to have the ability to do these things. And so when you go out and you do something that kind of proves it a little bit, I think you walk away with a very satisfied feeling. And so you have the people that are like the preppers who are prepping in fear and are always kind of on edge. I don't really care for those folks, but you have also the people who are the preppers to a certain extent, but they're also very calm. And part of that too is because, hey, I know how to live off the land. I've got the guns, I got the ammo. They're like ready to go. Some of those people are just waiting for everything to go down, because it's like they've prepared themselves so much. They're like, put me to the test now. I'm ready to go. And I'd rather be that person than the one who's just terrified and has a meltdown watching the news and stuff.
Yeah, I think masculinity is a way to describe that.
Yes.
And part of being a man, part of being male, is providing, is being able to care for your own and for your family. You're the head of household, finding a place to live, whether that's, building a hut in the woods because economy's falling apart, or buying a house down the street. That providing need was biblically given to us by the Lord. And so we are to be the breadwinner. We are to bring the bacon home, all these terms underscoring our role that God has for us in this world. And so, you want to be able to handle things. If you think about this, a couple generations ago, these conversations wouldn't even be necessary, because everybody knew how to clean a chicken. Everybody knew how to farm, and, everybody was, they were self-sufficient. But right or wrong, society has come to the point where, we really don't have to have any skill at all to live a comfortable life. The electricity's pumped into the house, the water's pumped into the house. There's, we didn't even build our own house. The roofs, we want the dryer goes bad, we call an expert. Like, we really don't have to know how to do anything, and we can live a very comfortable life. And so you want to encourage people to get some ingenuity and learn how to do things, and take a project that you might have hired someone out to do and just try tackling it and see if you can do it. And, that also doesn't have to always be hunting and fishing. It can just be, the car's broke down. I'll see if I can fix it. I want to be able to be self-sufficient, and, just things in life that you can just, get your hands dirty and learn how to do something. But society today, man, I tell you, the men out there, like, you look at their hands and they're like not a callus to be found. They don't even know how to hold a hammer. And you're just like, if World War III breaks out and it's based on not our technology, but it's based on the American male, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, and think about this too, because we're seeing the reality of what we've been expecting for a long time. So for one, we know for a fact that we are all a very dependent people when it comes to technology. Everything we do, I mean, we can't function without technology. And so the thing is, we're already seeing where certain technology and conveniences are being denied people who aren't submitting, to the government. And just like we're seeing weird things happen with people's bank accounts and stuff like that, I mean, we got to understand the mark of the beast is a real thing. It's definitely coming. And you know what? It's probably not all the full-blown mark of the beast is probably going to come in phases. I mean, the first time, Christians are told that they can't buy or sell. I mean, well, we already had one time in a lot of places, but I mean, we might have several things leading up to that. So, we think, well, the tribulation's when you're going to need to know how to live off the land. We might have a period of time before that when you see the way things are going. So, knowing these things are very important. And I think our instinct is telling us, while we like technology, like while we like the cell phones and the cars and all these things, there's something in us that I think we know we're vulnerable right now. And, just like animals, animals, they have that survival instinct and they are very aware of what's going on all the time. I've got my deer head behind me and, you can't see it in the screen right now. But I mean, deer, they have a very heightened awareness not because they're just these fearful creatures, but because they recognize dangers that are out there. And the thing is, you have to be hiding under a rock to not realize just how potentially dangerous things are right now. I mean, look at some of the stuff going on in some of the cities today. I mean, God bless you if you live in a city, but the thought of that just terrifies me. Just because you are so codependent with everyone there. I mean, you can't live off the land in a city. And if the grid ever goes down there, I mean, it's gonna be a nightmare just to get out of the city, and get into the country or something like that. And, I don't know, I feel vulnerable when I'm in places like that. And, that's just how I am. You've got places, even in America too, where you're not allowed to have guns. And, that makes me also, feel vulnerable if I'm not allowed to do those things. And even in Illinois, they're trying, and in some places they're trying to make even things like raw milk illegal to sell. I mean, the marijuana's fine, raw milk, not okay. And it's like they hate everything that is just natural and organic. And I'm telling you, we need, these are the things that we need. And I think we're just more and more vulnerable. We're fine with being dependent on medications. And listen, if you have to have medications, you have to have medications. But I think we're just too accepting of the fact that, I'll just live off this medication. I think we ought to always try any route other than that, if possible. Because it makes me feel vulnerable. I feel vulnerable because of the fact that, I've got really bad eyes and I'm dependent on glasses and contacts for the most part. I could survive without them. But I mean, I don't like being dependent on these things. And I think modern technology, the conveniences, it's made us vulnerable. It's enabled us to be very weak. You talked about masculinity. Look at how many just wimpy, effeminate guys are out there that just have no manliness at all. But you know what? Right now in America, you can survive being as effeminate and weak and pathetic as all get out. I mean, we got people that weigh 600 pounds can't even get out of their house, and they're surviving. How's this happening? But the thing is, if they ever decide to take those things away from us, and they can, then what are you going to do? Because we know it's going to happen one of these days.
Well, a great example of that would be the war with Ukraine and Russia. And I don't know if you saw where they were calling for Elon Musk to shut down electrical vehicles in Russia to stop them from moving and mobilizing. And I'm thinking, one, the fact that they're asking that, but then two, the fact that he could do that. And, so think of, obviously we know the crosshairs are going to be on Bible-believing Christians. So whatever power that they wield today will be directed at us. So don't have local assembly, only online streaming. And then they revoke our streaming privileges. They've shut us down. Oh, bad gas vehicles. Here's electrical vehicles. But then when we don't like you, we're going to shut we're going to forbid transportation and movement for anybody that is doing things that are against our policies. And so we can see that. I think the error though, I'm raising teenagers, and about maybe a year or two ago, I realized they don't know anything about computers. I raised them, no TV, no computers, but I don't want to go to the extreme where, if in society in which we live today, you need to know computers, you need to have a cell phone, you need to be able to type, you need to be able to work your way. So you don't want to run to the extreme of I'm going to live off the grid, because you will not be able to function in society. So you have to have that balance of, okay, this is what I need to survive in this world. But if they take these things away, could I still survive? And I don't think we need to self-induce that on us ourselves today. But I think it's a revival survival just as a glimpse of, okay, how would I do in a scenario like that? And then everybody walks away with, okay, I didn't handle that as well. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to research this. And so that's not necessarily the reason we do it, but it is a beneficial takeaway that you come back with. And of course, we come back and we turn the ACs on and we have our cell phones. We're not eliminating those in our life. And so make sure that when you read scripture and you see what's ahead, that you don't go ahead and live in that moment now and forbid yourself any of the luxuries of this world because you know that they're going to be gone one day. Well, no, let's use them for our advantage. I clearly see when what we're doing right now will be removed from us. We will not have this ability. So then, you know what we want to do? Let's put every sermon we preach on stream, live stream it. Let's do discussions like this, the plan of salvation. Let's fill the airwaves with this. And then if they take it from us, well, some of the greatest works ever done for the Lord were done before internet. Mm-hmm. And so, but that doesn't mean we won't use it while we have it.
I agree. Yeah, because I love technology. I'm not against it, but I just like to know I could live without it if I had to. And we all say that we can, but it's things like, what you guys do where you kind of get to put that to the test. And most of us, we never really test those things. So, yeah.
It's funny because we'll do intro interviews. It's these guys all getting out of the van. They had breakfast that morning, their final meal. I'm sure they had their wives make pancakes and bacon and everything they could think of, knowing they're going to starve. And, you're interviewing them like, hey, what do you expect? Oh, I expect it to be, easy. It's just 3 days and we'll catch a few fish. And they're just going in with such confidence. Mm-hmm. And then we'll do an exit interview. And it's like, the guy's depleted, he hasn't slept in 2 nights and he hasn't eaten a full meal in forever. And, he's there, people start getting on edge because they haven't had their coffee or whatever it is. And you're just like, I'm not coming back. It's awful. It was harder than I could ever imagine. Yeah. And then some of them don't even want to do the exit interview. They're just like hitting for the car and upset because there's a car behind them and they can't get out and like they're running for home. But it just shows that what seems like, oh, I could do it. Well, give it a try. Almost, have you ever watched someone do drywall work and you think, oh, that looks easy. Try it. And it is easy once you learn it, but there's a learning curve. Someone's doing a construction job. Oh, wow, I could do that. Till you go to try it. You're like, oh man, there's a skill involved. And so, I think it's great that, we have opportunity to sharpen our skills and learn new things. And as a church, whether you host a revival survival, or a camping trip, there's all kinds of ways that you can better each other and help each other and teach skills. I think even in the ladies' circle, the elderly women, sewing is a lost art, cooking, things like that. Those are all part of the same discussion, but in the female section. And so I think it's great.
Yeah. So what do you think are probably some of the biggest shockers for people whenever they go out? Because again, we all think we can handle it. Because I know I think you mentioned this a little bit too, or maybe it was when we were talking before. People think I can go, a couple days without eating. But the thing is too, we still think 3 meals a day. You hear that a lot. But I think 3 meals a day was for back when people worked very physical jobs where they were farming. Now I don't think we need 3 meals a day anymore. But if you're out in the wilderness, and living off the land, you're using a lot more energy, burning a lot more calories. So I guess, what are just kind of the biggest shockers for everyone when they actually get out there, a day or two in?
Yeah, that probably is the biggest shocker. And that is how quickly you burn through calories. So you have your meal Monday morning, and then you're at the drop-off point at 10 o'clock is when it starts. And that's when, we're trekking through woods. It's not paths. We're clearing paths. And you do that for 30, 40 minutes and you're carrying a backpack, it's just exerting energy. You're dripping wet in sweat because the humidity is super high here in Florida. And by the time you get to the campsite, you are ready for a meal, but you still have to set up camp and then fish and hope you catch one, so so that night, you may have caught a few fish and ate, but you did not replenish what you burned. And then you get up the next morning and you wake up hungry. Now, I'm not typically a breakfast guy. I don't typically eat breakfast. I'm a 2-meal-a-day guy. But when you're out in the woods like that, you are hungry in the morning because you have done a lot more physical work. And I like your takeaway. I think the 3-meal-a-day was structured back when we physically worked. Work today is not the same as it was back then. And good or bad, I mean, you have to learn to, you're going to have the computer skills. Somebody's got to do the desk jobs. That's not saying that's not manly, but you have to, you still want to include these other items and areas in your life to where you are available and can fend for yourself in these events. So, I think the biggest takeaway is how hungry you get and how little that fish you're eating replenishes you. And you realize, wow, this is going to be harder than I thought. Obviously, if we were to extend it from 3 days to a week or 3 weeks, there's a sustainability that will then happen. You'll learn to conserve energy. You'll learn to, better ways to find food. And I think you could do it. But in just that 3 days, I think the biggest takeaway is this is harder than I thought. And I don't know that I could survive a week. Mm-hmm. So we don't want anybody to die to prove our point. 3 days, I think everybody gets to that conclusion and we're ready to go home.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of it too is not only just the lack of food, but as Americans, we're very addicted to certain kinds of food too, and so if we're not getting our usual, salty, sweet, high fructose corn syrup, all these things we're addicted to, then, we think we're dying. So yes. I think that's probably a big thing.
That was the first year for me. So I gave up coffee probably, 10, 15 years ago, a long time ago, because I was addicted to it. And I would always be envious of people who could drink it and then not crawl back to it every couple hours. And I was just like, I was the kind of guy, like 10 o'clock, if I hadn't had a cup or two, I had a headache that no coffee would then at that point eliminate. I was gone for the day. And I just got tired of it and I quit 100 times and finally I just gave it up. And so I thought, this is not gonna be hard. I'm not addicted to anything. I don't have a caffeine addiction. These guys out here, they're all gonna be struggling and I'm just gonna be, plowing, trekking through the woods. But I didn't realize I was addicted to sugars and carbs. You eat 4 or 5 fish and you're full, but your body is craving and you start getting headaches and you're still thinking you're hungry. And so the second year, I actually did a starvation diet prior and I cut out carbs, I cut out sugar, and I did so much better because, 3 days in, if you're going to, your body's still craving these things, you're not past that. But if you can do a starvation diet and rid yourself of those addictions, you do well. So should a problem come, you would have those moments where you feel like you're dying, but you're actually not. It's actually removing those things from your system. And then you'll actually have a second wind come and you'll do well. And so sometimes that's something, you try to tell people, hey, it's going to be hard, but if you can stick with it for just a few days, you'll come back, you'll revive, and you won't need those things anymore. But those are probably the hardest things that you don't realize you're addicted to until you don't have them. Sugar and carbs, I think, are one of the, outside of caffeine, of the bigger ones that kind of go under the radar.
Yeah. So I think one of the beneficial things about events like this is it teaches you about yourself. And I think one of the things that you end up learning is that you're just very weak. And that's why I think fasting is good, just because it is a reminder of just how weak we are in our flesh. When we can't go one day without eating, it shouldn't be that hard, but yet it just consumes our whole day. We act like we're dying. The fact that we can't even give up. I don't believe soda is a sin. I don't believe junk food is a sin. I'm not one of these food Nazis or anything like that. But it is concerning how addicted we are to those things, and how, you know, people, they can't go a day without going to Starbucks. And, you know, I think it's good to have those pleasures every now and then, but when you're dependent on those things, that's just not good. I don't think I think it's good to be able to live without stuff.
Yeah, you could do your own little survival test in the comfort of your own living room. Just say, okay, today I'm not eating processed foods. I'm not going to go get a drink at the local, Starbucks or gas station. No carbonation, no sugars. I'm drinking water, and I'm eating fruits and vegetables and meat. Like no packets or sugars or carbs or starches. I'm just eating vegetables and meat. You know what you'll find? You'll find you're irritable. You'll find you're hungry and you're not hungry. And you'll realize, man, and all I need is just that carb, that just give me that donut and that glass of soda and I'll feel so much better. And you're thinking like, that's the worst thing for you. But that just shows that it's a reality check, if anything, that, wow, I can't even go one day without some kind of chemicals being put into my body. And, like you say, I don't believe we should be food Nazis about it, but at the same time, it would open your eyes to think, yeah, maybe my diet's not as good as it should be.
Right. Yeah. And one thing I wanted to talk about too is when it comes to this, subject of survival, whether it be going and experiencing it in some kind of event like this, watching a survival show, it definitely is something that men are more interested in, than women. And I think a lot of that too is because of the fact that it's also a part of our instinct. If you're just a normal man, you understand it's your responsibility to protect and to provide for your family. And so when you have a wife and kids, it is kind of a scary thought thinking about the grid going down. And then you're responsible for them now. And, it's nice. I'm glad I don't do the grocery shopping. My wife does the grocery shopping. I'm glad she does all that. But, what if she couldn't go to the grocery store anymore? And it brings me some comfort knowing that I live right by the river, where I could probably go catch some fish if I need to. We have a small garden every year. It doesn't produce a whole lot of food, but I like having that, knowing, we could, grow some of our own food and things like that. But, what are your thoughts on that too? Just about, men and that just natural instinct. No, it's their job to provide.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. And that goes back to the masculinity, and society has produced the opposite. And so, you could literally do well in this society we live in today and have never swung a hammer, have never fished, have never done anything outdoors, and you're going to do well. But the thing is, take all that away, which we know that they're going to be limited to that, these luxury items, to those who have the mark, and they're refusing to even buy or sell. And, we don't want to spark fear, like, oh, what do we do? Let's start this, this campground, and everybody's going to come and we're going to live here and it's going to be a cult. We're just saying, no, start doing some prepping and start preparing, start learning some skills, be a man. And, not everybody's interested. Hunting does not thrill me at all. I hate hunting. I've never really gone, but it's the patience of sitting in a tree stand. Now, tracking, like if I was going to go elk hunting or something where you're actually tracking, I think I'd like that. So not everybody's going to, I hate it when you get into these, I'm more manly than you, because you don't like this, you're too effeminate, and you'll see guys go into those and, Pastor, I think he's a little effeminate. Like, define effeminate. Anybody less manly than you. That's what effeminate means to most people. And, so you don't want to get into those battles. Well, I don't like to fish, so maybe I'm not a man. No, not everybody likes to fish, but you want to be able to know how to do things, and you want to be able to get your hands dirty. We really have raised men that, they're more worried about their clothes and their, the things they have. And you're like, just go out there and get the job done. And so toughen up would be a good, call to the men. Just, hey, toughen up, learn these skills. Don't be afraid to try them. Certainly don't buy into the, you have to do this or you're not a man mentality, but it is in our instinct to do those. It is in our God-given role and ability to do these things. And so you want to do that. So even as in the singles world. You're a young lady and you're thinking, I'm looking for a provider. Well, make sure you got someone who can physically provide should the deed come. He might be able to work himself through the computer, but what if the computer's gone? And it's going to be based on this guy's ability to build something or take care of things. So you want to make sure that you've got all those areas covered. Liken it to people who are up north there, like you, Pastor McMurtry. It's very likely that a snowstorm will come one day and you lose power for a couple of days. Those things happen, blizzards, things like that. And so it's not fearful to have water stored up, have some dried canned goods stored up, knowing that, hey, very likely batteries, very likely the power will go off, road system will shut down. It's not an unrealistic fear. It's like, this is very likely to happen. Now in Florida, it'd be hurricanes. Those happen. And whenever a hurricane is projected, I'm sure it's the same with like a winter storm. Everybody flocks to the stores. Everything's empty. They realize we might have to tough this one out. Well, as Christians, let's just, hey, we know that this world is wicked. We know where it's headed. We are going to have to tough some things out. Now, that shouldn't spark fear. It should just be like, hey, I'm ready. If God wants to take my house, he can have my house. If we're off the grid, we're off the grid. And obviously it'll cause us to focus on the eternal things and not the physical things. But part of the physical is being able to feed your family and find a water source. And so I think it's great that we're having this discussion just to spark people's interest. And you know what? Use technology right now to be more manly. Do your research online. Hey, how to fish? What's the best way to set this trap? And how do I tell the plant from this plant? And use it to your advantage so that you've got that knowledge and you're able to provide should the time come.
Right. Yeah. And I like what you said too about, you have people that like, oh, if you don't like hunting, there must be, you're not as manly as I am. Well, here's the thing. When it comes to this survival instinct or whatever, how that manifests itself in everyone is going to be a little different, or where they go to kind of fulfill that. Some people, it might be in their ability to fight, and they're into boxing and martial arts. They like to know that if they got to get in some hand-to-hand combat, they're ready to go. For some people, it's guns. For some people, it's hunting, to know that I could go out in the woods and I could kill anything. For other people, it might be in farming, that I can raise livestock and I can grow things. All of these are definitely manly things. For some people too, even some other areas of sports, it might be things like running. We got Pastor Randall in the chat. It probably makes him feel good to know that, hey, if I ever got far away from my family and my car goes down, I can do 100 miles, in a day, and I can get back to them. We like to know that we have the ability to do these things. And so while we've all got our area that's important to us, where one guy, his thing might just be, he might find comfort in his ability to go sit in the woods and just live and exist for long periods of time. So yeah, it's not a matter of, you've got to like all the same activities I do. I think there's a lot of different ones that, people are interested in, but I do think men's interest in all these different things we've covered, it's a part of that survival instinct. It's a part of our responsibility that we have, knowing it's our job to protect, it's our job to provide. And so it's fulfilling when we do things that are uncomfortable, or painful, and that some people look at and say, that's not fun at all. So
it goes to that thought of accomplishing something. When you're constructing something, you step back, it's done, you look at it, wow, we built this. You go out for 3 days, boy, we survived. And you want that, especially the men, we want that accomplishment. We want that reward of labor. And again, labor is not a punishment. Labor is a gift from God, and we are to work. And so I think however you get that, satisfaction, like you said, there's so many areas. You don't want to get into the locker room competition. That's the last thing we're wanting. But you do want to be able to say, you know what, this is where my strengths are. This is where my weaknesses are. And that is something that God has put in us as men. And let's cultivate that. Let's better each other and have a good time while we're doing it.
Yep. Yeah. Now, I will say this, and maybe we can kind of close with this. We're getting ready to shut this down. But for ladies, okay, when it comes to survival, I think there's a lot of ladies out there that if you gave them flour, wheat, a lot of things that people grow that people used to live on, a lot of ladies today wouldn't know what to do with it. A lot of ladies today, if they can't stick it in a microwave or just pull it out of a box and stick it into an oven, they're in trouble. And so, that might be like a good contest you could do for the ladies, is like have some kind of thing where they cook off the land. And
that's a good idea. We have several ladies in our church that I think would actually like the revival survival aspect. We're not ever going to do it because we're afraid they'll outshow us. So we're not going to let them do that. And we probably wouldn't have very many ladies want to do it. But, one thing what Robin had to learn when we went to Romania for 8 years was, there's not all these boxed goods and canned goods. You actually have to learn to cook from scratch. And so I think it does do well in that aspect. It's just amazing to us that the family unit that we see today is so much tied to the grid, that take that grid away and you'd realize quickly, wow, we are not as tough as we might think we are.
That's true. It's true. So yeah, I think that'd be interesting. I wouldn't know what to do. I'm not a cook. I'd be in trouble. I think even when it came to meat and stuff, I'd be able to do some things with that, but it wouldn't taste as good as it potentially could if I knew how to do some of these other things. So, having a good woman that knows what she's doing with cooking could make surviving a lot better for you, for sure.
But think about it from this perspective. Like in society today, masculinity is looked down upon, and the skinny jeans, wimpy, no callus on the hands guy is what everybody's trying to be. But then they're also disparaging the effeminate side of the woman who's got the apron and she's baking cookies and she's cooking from scratch. If you describe a woman in that category, they're gonna be like, you're male chauvinistic bigot. You think a woman's place is in the kitchen. And it's like, well, God has given her the responsibility, the rearing the children, and those are actually good things. And, so both roles, whether it's the male or the female, society is trying to invert it, where the man's dependent and the woman's the one that can do everything. She's the one that can swing that hammer and swing that axe. And it's like, we go back to our God-given roles. Men be men and the women be effeminate. And, we can both improve in those areas.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But yeah, so I guess basically, the gist of this whole thing is, I think we all instinctively know, because of our survival instinct, that we're kind of sitting ducks right now. We're very dependent on technology, the government, everything. And we're seeing that they can take these things away from us whenever they want. And so I think there's something inside of us that knows I need to be able to survive without them. And I think that's why we're interested in these survival type shows, experiencing these things. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's something that we ought to try to develop and work on. And I think what you guys are doing on there is great. I would like to try something like that. I don't know where we do it out here. It's Illinois.
Florida.
What's that?
Florida.
Yeah, just try to get everybody down there. But that would be a lot of fun. Maybe for 2 days. I don't know about 3 days. But either way, so you haven't released the last revival survival yet?
No, that's not. It will come out, and when it does, I'll be sure to include you, and you can mirror it and do all that kind of stuff.
I'm anxious to watch that, but I have not participated in revival survival. I've just seen the videos, and I thought it was great, and wanted to talk about it. But I appreciate you joining me on the show. Make sure you check out Pastor Boyle's YouTube channel. I'll leave links. Somebody left links to those videos in the live chat, but I'll also leave links in the description of the video, and you'll have to go check those out. It's a lot of fun. If you're ever in Florida, make sure you go visit his church. I guarantee you will enjoy that. And we're looking forward to going back out there in September. Is it, or October? October, right. Brother Hugo just said winter survival. That's what we'd have to do up here.
Ooh,
but
I'm
man,
out.
Winter survival is just, we have that every year. And I can't imagine in my heated house and everything. I can't imagine doing it actually out in the wild, but that'd be interesting for sure. But
You could almost come up with like a revival survival, go in different tropic areas. If Florida, think about like Arizona, desert,
right,
you guys, winter. I mean, mountains of Tennessee. There's all kinds of that's beyond what my ability would be, but that would be kind of fun.
Yeah, it would be interesting if we all switch places from our natural habitats. I'd like to see all the Florida people up here, in the cold, and then we be down there in the heat and the humidity, all passing out immediately. So
I think we'd be all right in the winter because we just had some really cold weather here. It got to the high 30s for a couple days in a row, and we made
it. Oh my goodness! See, yeah, you guys are croaked for sure, but we'd all get eaten by alligators and bit by snakes down there. So, but either way, ladies and gentlemen, we're not as a whole very tough. Not this culture. And I'm telling you, I believe the day is coming where we're going to need to be tough. So get out there, go camping, learn some survival skills, do manly things just because you're men. And I think you'll be glad you did it. So thank you, everyone, for watching. Hopefully we will see you all next Tuesday. God bless.